Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Regional Minister. Thank you for saying also the mother of the concepts, because in philosophy, Adela is the mother of this concept. And now we are going to move on to a different part of the panel. I'm going to sit down at the table as well. Maybe I will ask you some questions, and we are going to create a dialogue so that those who are here today are able to participate, and also persons following us in other countries, following us online. So please, we are going now to speak with Adela Cortina, professor at the university.
Resumo muy brevemente su trayectoria. Doctora en filosofía
of Valencia, a doctor in philosophy since 1976, working since 1987, and she is an expert in ethic and moral philosophy in our country, and she's responsible for the creation of the term Aporophobia, which was incorporated to the dictionary of the Royal Academy in Spain in 2017. And please, I would like to ask you for an applause for Olivier de Schutter. Please correct me afterwards if I'm not pronouncing correctly. Welcome, and please have a seat here as well. He's a relator, special relator of the UN and doctor in law, and also a professor in Ljubljana, Belgium. He was named a relator, special relator of the UN on extreme poverty and human rights. Thank you very much for coming and participating today, being part of the United Nations. I'm going to sit down here next to you. I hope you can listen to me. Adela and Olivier, please turn on your microphones.
Ahora. Que se pongan. Sí.
Ahora sí.
Sí. Bueno, pues vamos a empezar.
Well, we're going to start. I just made a brief summary. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Adela Cortina, and then a few questions to Olivier de Schutter as well. Well, I'd like to have a dialogue with both of you, such as a radio dialogue, and also have a debate with our audience. Adela Cortina, thank you very much. You were saying the regional minister said you are the mother of the term aporophobia, and you are a full professor in philosophy, and it is very difficult to create a new term. It is well known at an academic level, also a social level, and legal level. What does it mean? Well, I have studied a lot about her, and I have read a lot written by Adela. And it is an honor for me to be next to her today. It is a pleasure. What does it mean for you, being the mother of the term, but also of the use of this term, aporophobia, with the impact that it has today? Well, most of all, I'm going to say coming to Murcia is for me like going home. I have been a teacher, professor at the University of Murcia. I have a lot of friends here. And I think Murcia is not only a welcoming land, but also very worried about recovering from poverty, fighting against poverty, and welcome. I would like to say congratulations for being as you are. And I know you are this way. So congratulations. And please continue to be this way. And then, well, regarding aporophobia, I think it is a reasonable term, because I thought there is hatred to foreigners, but people are often offended by persons who are poor in general. So they are foreign, but most of all they are poor. We are glad to receive foreign persons who arrive here as tourists, etc. So the problem is not tourists. The problems are not football players who are very rich. And well, I'm not going to give you examples of sports representatives who live in Arab countries, etc. No, the problem is poverty. And I wanted to design a term which was expressive of this problem, which is not appreciating these persons who are poor. And when someone says they have a family member who is, for instance, an engineer, etc., they tell you this story. But if they have a family member who is poor, they don't tell you. And when I started with this topic, a lot of young people wrote to me saying that they wanted to write on this topic at the university. And they wanted to make research on this topic, because this means a different point of view, and looking at the world from the point of view of people who are vulnerable. And I was worried by these subjects. Carlos, I thank you a lot, so that you can, because you want to universalize the term. And at the Bristol University Press, the term has been translated into aporophobia, so Americans can read about it, and it's no problem at all. And if they are interested about it, we can make a debate on it. Why is aporophobia a problem? Because all humans have dignity, and we cannot dismiss a person because all of them have dignity and are worth. And we cannot construct a democracy if you don't give value to the law. So it would not be a democracy. So we should stop and fight this problem. And from the point of view of economic poverty, which we are dealing with, but there are others, from this point of view, I agree completely with the objectives of sustainable development of the 2030 agenda. And the first problem is we have to fight poverty and finish with the problem of poverty right now. And it is very ashaming that we haven't finished with this problem yet, because people are thinking about other topics which are not poverty, and some of them are thinking about winning the elections, etc. Are there enough measures? Yes, of course, we know them, but we should have the will to do it now, right now. I would like to say as well, and it is very important, this is not only about poverty. I would like to tell you, I would like you to define the term poor. The poor are those who cannot go on with their plans of their life. I was able to study at university, to go on with my plans. I was able. But the poor are those who are not capable to make these plans real. And a poor person in our societies, since the beginning of history, we used to exchange. So I give you, you give me. And from the beginning, those who cannot give you something, for instance, they can give you votes. Maybe they are not rich, but they can make you a favor. So I put you there, I can give you a prize, this is a privilege. So when you have the capacity to change something in our societies, and from the beginning of history, you are powerful. Who is the poor? The person who has nothing to give. And this person is not interesting for the rest. And I think it is very important to go to the point to end poverty. And it is written in our brain, we are aporophobes. And when people say this society, no, we should say we have it in our brain. So different societies, Huns, Pygmies, etc. We tried to reciprocate. So we need each other. And from the beginning of the times. And this aporophobia is explained in the book. I recommend you to read it, because there are biological bases. And if we are aporophobe, it's normal, because, yes, my father said poverty is disgusting, and so on. And one thing is, it is normal, and another thing, a different thing, is we should potentiate this way of living. And it is time to eradicate this way of having a look at others in an instrumental way. I gave you something, you give me something, and we should eradicate this. We should change this in daily life. And taking into account that we have this problem. And I just would like to tell you an anecdote of an Indian chief telling a story to grandchildren. And he said, there are two balloons fighting against each other. One of war, etc. And they say, which wolf is going to win? And the grandfather said, the wolf who is going to win the other wolves is the one who is feeded. So if you feed one wolf, that's the wolf that will win. So we have to feed the wolf. And the wolf that knows that every man is interested in himself, that every man has a dignity.
Otra cuestión más, porque luego de aquí iremos perfilando todo.
And another important topic, the people as people able to exchange people. And the problem perhaps is when we exchange people, when they become means to ends. And we'll look at this later, the debate. Because part of the problem is the use we make of people, how we look at people as means and not ends in themselves. What a pleasure to talk about philosophy in this faculty. Very briefly, you said that these terms is being used as at supranational level, beyond our borders in Latin America, also in other European institutions, in North America. Of course, this has an impact, also legally, right? So what is the last question? Yeah, the use beyond our borders, so in Latin America, but also beyond the linguistic use, how this becomes concrete in legal terms. Yeah, of course, this is very important. From the point of view of law, there are a number of measures are being taken and rules are being written. I've participated in some of the conferences. I've been sent information from the University of Salamanca, Barcelona, and universities in Latin America. And from the point of view of law, legality and norms and regulations are being created. From a philosophical point of view, a number of thoughts are being created, but also in terms of concrete plans of actions that are being created. And I'm also being informed about this. For example, in terms of artificial intelligence, also, people are trying to see the different bias the algorithms have. And so how these algorithms show preference and have a bias against the people who are in situations of poverty. So there's people who are creating programs to overcome these kind of biases that the algorithms have and that work against some people in our humanity. So there's an incredible amount of people working in this field and working together, which I think is unbelievable. This is economists, philosophers, legalists, social workers, and as the song says, for making this world, bring all the hands. And it's true. All people from all walks of life are working together. In the University of Barcelona, they made an international symposium where, there was a participation of different kinds of people. I have a person here, actually, participant, and people from different fields, and they see what to do from sociology, anthropology, from law. What's your field? Law. Okay, right. So everyone from their field were working. That was amazing. And this year we have the second symposium. So, as I said, worldwide people are getting together to see how we can include and not leave behind people who are an end in themselves, that we don't leave them behind. And the university have to put all their knowledge at the service of this mission. Thank you, Adela. Now I'm going to ask a number of questions also to you. establish this dialogue, and then we will keep on exchanging. Good afternoon again, Olivier de Schutter. I hope I'm pronouncing well your name. So what do you think is the role of the United Nations and the European Union for the fight against aporophobia is integrated explicitly in the framework of social inclusion and human rights?
Thank you. Good afternoon to all. Great pleasure to be here, and great pleasure, of course, to be next to Adela Cortina, and thank you for all the work you're doing on this important topic. I think what really is important to emphasize is that, in response to your question, the fight against poverty in areas such as employment, housing, education, social protection will not succeed unless we also take seriously the question of aporophobia, negative stereotypes against people in poverty, the discrimination they face, the humiliations they are being subjected to. When you ask people in poverty what their experience is of their daily life, of course they speak about lack of income, lack of decent work. They speak about material deprivations, poor housing, for example. But they also speak about institutional maltreatment from administrations. They speak about how they are looked upon by landlords or potential employers. They speak about how their children are bullied in schools. They speak about how their knowledge, their expertise is ignored, as if it were without any form of value. And they call this unrecognized contributions. And if we want to be serious about tackling poverty in its material dimensions, we need to understand also that aporophobia, povertyism, is a source of exclusion, making it very difficult to have access to good jobs, to housing, to education, to social protection. Let me explain why. Employment. It is routinely the case that when an employer has to make a decision as to whether or not to recruit a person, the candidate goes through an interview. And at the interview, of course, you ask about the CV of that person, the qualifications, but you also look at how the person behaves. You look at whether that person has the right codes. You listen to the person and you wonder about where the accent comes from. You look at the person and you see the teeth, right? It's a very good indicator of class, teeth. You anticipate whether the person will be seducing potential clients and whether he or she will be interacting well within the workforce, right? Is he one of us? Or is he or she perhaps a bit strange and difficult to accommodate? And many people in poverty do not find jobs because of aporophobia. Yes, povertyism. Just like women don't have jobs because of sexism, just like ethnic minorities don't find jobs because of racism. Let me take another example, that of housing. When a landlord proposes an apartment to rent, the landlord will assess the candidate to lease the apartment. And if that candidate says, I have enough money to pay, I'm happy with the apartment, you proposed 800 euros per month, that's something I can pay. But if the landlord discovers that this money comes from social assistance, or that this is irregular income that may vary from month to month, the landlord may be reluctant to provide that apartment for rent. And people do not find apartments when they depend on social aid or on unemployment benefits. Let me take the example of education. To a large extent, early school dropout and the fact that children from low-income backgrounds move very early on at 12, 13 years old to technical training, professional schools, is because of aporophobia, right? They are bullied in school and they don't enjoy school because they are harassed. They do not perform well at school because they are not gaining enough support within the family. And because they are not trusted, they lose self-confidence. There's a famous notion in social psychology which is called stereotype threat. It's introduced by Claude Steele and Jacob Aronson in 1995. And it refers to the fact that when children, but it applies also to adults, know that they are being evaluated to check whether it is true or not that people in poverty perform less well at intellectual quotient tests, they perform less well, right? They internalize the negative stereotype about them. And so children will perform less well if they are constantly judged, if they feel judged. So for all these reasons, we will fail to ensure access to employment, to housing, to education, if we don't attack the root of the discrimination that people in poverty face. And I mentioned, apart from employment, housing, and education, I mentioned social protection. I did a full report to the United Nations on a rather bizarre notion, which is called non-take-up of rights in the field of social protection. That refers to the gap between legal entitlements people have and their effective ability to have access to unemployment benefits, to ingresso minimo vital, to housing allowances, etc. The gap results from the fact that even though people may be entitled to certain benefits, they will not go through the full procedure. It's complicated for them. They will not fill the form online. And sometimes they don't go through the procedure because it is traumatizing to go to the municipality or to go to the ministry to ask for your benefit. Because in the past, you've been scolded. You've been told you should be ashamed of your condition. You should not depend on public charity. And people are ashamed. They fear the reaction. They fear the humiliation. And they do not claim the benefits as a result. So social protection does not benefit them because they do not dare to claim what they have a right to because of aporophobia. Right? So for me, it's a key notion. I think it's extremely important. I work with others, including my very dear friend Carlos Sosia, on the new EU anti-poverty strategy. And in all my meetings at the European Commission, at the European Parliament, I insist that povertyism, aporophobia are included in the discussions in order to make sure that we manage to deliver on the more classic dimensions of poverty that I described. Thank you.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Because, we have also framed how, even if rights are consolidated, now the access and the gap that is also stereotyped, because there's also sexism, ageism, how there is a gap between the rights and the access to those rights. And so this has to do a lot with the knowledge. The knowledge, so reaching those places has to do with democratizing knowledge about those rights. And we'll leave this for the debate. But I have another question. So Does Aporophobia have similar characteristics in different countries, or are there also different kinds of aporophobia, which is actually cultural dependent? This is for Oliver, but Adela, if you want, you can approach it later too.
Well, I think aporophobia, as Adela reminded us, is very often combined with other forms of exclusion. And it is at the intersection of those exclusions that we have, the worst cases of discrimination. For example, women face discrimination, especially if they are not rich, right? Migrants, as you mentioned, face discrimination, especially when they are poor. And so in that sense, yes, one can say that aporophobia has different manifestations in different societies. But I would like to note that today we are witnessing a rise in aporophobia linked, I think, to the fragilization of welfare policies, the precariousness of work, the shift from unconditional social support schemes to support schemes that are increasingly conditional, where people have to basically agree with the social service providers that they will comply with certain requirements in order to continue to receive support. And all this is creating economic insecurity. And what happens when people feel insecure? Well, they fear others who may compete with them for access to certain social benefits. And aporophobia is rising today because the welfare state in many countries is being fragilized, and because others are seen as competitors, as a threat. If you look at the reasons why in the UK, United Kingdom, Reform UK of Nigel Farage has risen in the polls, if you look at why Rassemblement National in France is rising in the polls, if you look at how Alternative für Deutschland in Germany is rising, I will not comment upon Vox in Spain because I don't know Vox enough. But in those three countries I mentioned, very clearly those who vote for the far-right populists are people who are afraid. And whom are they afraid of? They are afraid of the outcasts, the migrants, and the poor, because they believe that the poor receive a form of social support, that therefore they will be denied. They see the poor as competing with them. And I think that is why we see a rise in aporophobia today. And unfortunately, I have to say, this is sometimes encouraged by irresponsible politicians who blame people in poverty for their condition and who say people in poverty should do more. They should activate themselves, right? They should wake up in the morning. It's not normal that they continue to depend on public benefits. And that kind of discourse creates the perception within the public that poverty is an individual problem, that the poor is to blame for his or her condition, and that poverty is not a societal problem resulting from the fact that we have societies that are not welcoming enough, protective enough, and attentive enough to what people in poverty can contribute through their experience.
Mm-hmm. Vamos a...
Let's move on to a debate, a bilingual debate with Adela and Olivier from this point. Olivier de Schutter was saying, we need a common strategy so that we can overcome our levels of aporophobia with a common strategy to eradicate stereotypes from where aporophobia races. So my first question for both of you would be, what strategies would be if we can design some strategies, and I'm not only speaking of political strategies, also public strategies, because the civilians from education, from culture, and also the media, because we all communicate. So we all communicate in our society. From which point and which would be these strategies? Who would like to start? Adela? I think strategies, as you were saying, should be useful for different countries, and they should be, well, I would like to call minimum points of justice. And we are no more humans if we don't have these points of humanity or justice. And it would be important that the United Nations detected these justice minimum points, so that civilized countries should have all these common minimum spots of humanity and justice. And it would be important to know if in China, Japan, and many countries, it is possible to find those minimum spots of justice, which would be linked to human rights. But I don't know if everybody would be ready to accept human rights and end with the problem of aporophobia. We usually say that Anglo-Saxons think that poverty is a responsibility of each person, and a person is to blame if they are poor. But in Spain, we understand that the poor are not responsible for their poverty. So which would be the strategy? Well, through education, of course, as always, because we always think of education when we don't know where to start. And after a long conference, everybody says, yeah, the solution is education. It's fundamental, of course, and we have to understand that every human being is worth in himself. But do all cultures agree about this? I'm asking the representative of the United Nations, Olivier, please. Are all the cultures, do they agree that every human being is worth and they cannot be instrumentalized and in service to a group, but they are worth? Or do all cultures defend this in China, in Japan, in Russia? Well, I mean, all countries I can think of. It is very important for me as an ethics professor to see if minimum spots of justice to be shared from different cultures to create a strategy. It would be important if we don't agree on this. It's impossible. So we should establish dialogues. I think in the United Nations, they are establishing this kind of dialogue. I hope some biologists, etc. Well, I would like to say in the about the United Nations, it is important, very important, the existence of the UN. It is a symptom of universality, and it is a good thing. And the program of the United Nations for immigration, I think it was an amazing program. But it is a shame that finally they don't go to an end, these programs. And well, I don't know if all countries agree on this justice. And when the United Nations creates a strategy, some countries sign, some others don't sign. But do they really agree? Can we find some common elements between some democratic countries, autocratic countries, other personalizing countries, is it possible to find these elements to create a common strategy to fight against aporophobia? Not only regarding means, but well, I ask this because I'm very interested on this, and maybe your answer will be on my book. Yes, the value of the question always in philosophy. Is it possible to find some common elements, intercultural elements among different states or countries independently of their political regimes, some democracies, some autocracies, etc., to fight against aporophobia?
Well, are not fixed, and what we can do in the UN is to compare national experiences to see what works, and what works best can inspire changes, legislative reforms, other tools in order to combat aporophobia in the most effective way possible. I think there are 5 key tools that can be used. The first one is, my friend lawyers will recognize this as the, obviously coming from a lawyer on the top of the list, it's to legislate against discrimination on grounds of poverty. In France, for example, there was one family that was accompanied by ATD Fourth World, NGO working with people in poverty, to a museum, Musée d'Orsay, but don't say it. They've become nice people. But in 2016, this family was asked to leave the museum because the smell, the odor was disturbing the other people visiting the museum. And so they were told, we will reimburse you your tickets, please depart. Right? And so France legislated against discrimination on grounds of economic vulnerability following this incident. And we have a very small number of cases before courts about this, but more and more countries have legislation prohibiting discrimination on grounds of socioeconomic disadvantage or poverty. If you are interested, I have some very nice examples of how courts have assessed whether there was a discrimination against a person because that person was poor. And I think it's very important. So that's the first tool, it's legislation. The second tool is social mixity, right? We live in worlds in which people who are rich and people who are poor meet less and less frequently with one another, right? They live in different neighborhoods. They watch different films. They speak with a different accent. They eat different things. And they have many prejudices against one another. And we have to break those barriers. Because that's the best way to destruct the stereotypes. For example, a school in Delhi, an elite school, a private school, was forced under legislation in India to accept a particular quota of students from low-income households. And they found that after those low-income children, those poor kids, had been in the school, the negative stereotypes that the rich kids had were much weaker, right? They became more tolerant. Social mixity can work, and social psychologists speak about the intergroup contact theory to explain this. The more you meet people from different backgrounds, the more you become tolerant. And it's very interesting to note that sometimes people are racist, anti-immigrant, although they barely have been affected by immigration at all. So social mixity is the second tool. The third tool is really to the way we speak about poverty and people in poverty. in many countries, we have regulations that prohibit people from sleeping in the parks or prohibit people from begging on the streets. And that is sometimes in the name of public order. In reality, it's because the merchants, the traders do not like the streets to be, with those people who are begging. So it's really for aesthetic reasons more than anything else. But it's all over the place, these regulations. Well, these regulations send a message that people in poverty are potential criminals, potentially delinquents, right? And although the European Court of Human Rights has decided a case concerning Switzerland, Lacatouche versus Switzerland in early 2021, saying if a person is begging for life-sustaining purposes, if that person has no choice, that is a human right that should be protected. Nevertheless, many municipalities across the world, including in Europe, still have this on their books. That sends a message that is very disturbing. The fourth tool is how we treat social protection. If you treat it as public charity, people who pay taxes and are relatively rich will resent this. And people who are relatively poor and benefit from social protection will be ashamed. If instead you say social protection is a right and it's an investment in people that will make everyone better off in society, if you speak about equality as benefiting society as a whole and not only people in poverty, then you change the perception of social protection and you avoid saying that people in poverty are actually profiting from the others, right? So I think it's a fourth important tool. And the fifth tool is encourage participation of people in poverty. Value their expertise. They are the real experts. They know what it takes to overcome the obstacles people in poverty face. And if they were more present in public administration, we could adopt policies that would be far more effective in achieving social cohesion and which, in addition, would be perceived as far more legitimate. So encouraging participation of people in poverty, valuing their expertise is the fifth way of combating povertyism.
Mm-hmm. Hay herramientas. Vamos muy breve.
Let's briefly ask somebody in the audience. I don't know if Adela wanted to ask something to Olivier. Well, I would just like to say to the audience and the online attendants in Europe, we're going to move on. Our colleagues are going to pass on the microphones, and you can share your experiences or participate, giving us your opinion. Or there are some persons here representing some institutions, some organizations. I know it is always difficult to start, but maybe somebody would like to participate. And also start with online questions. Let's start the debate.
Juan Antonio Segura es el...
Juan Antonio Segura is the president of EAPN. Since the Association for Aid and Shelter of Migrant People, also at national level. Yes, two thoughts here. First of all, Olivier, some years ago you were visiting the shanty towns in Huelva, in Andalusia, and you said that those were some of the most extreme images you had seen throughout your work life. Where do you think we have progressed since that visit in terms of eradication of extreme poverty, as it is the situation in the rural areas of Spain and Murcia. Then you also spoke about a very necessary tool, which is creating spaces of interaction, of relation, of coexistence. But how can we advance in this direction when we have housing policies that exclude people from accessing houses in certain areas? And also, how can we say that education is a tool that can tackle this poverty when the educational system is segregating poverty in schools, where 90% of the students is from foreign origin, and schools that do not integrate and do not mix migrant population? If we keep on advancing with these segregating policies in housing, in education, and all factors of society, it'll be very difficult to tackle this reality that you described so well. So we need to make a reality these recommendations. We need to do it from the housing and education policy, from the economic model. And I think we are seeing little progress. And I think I would like to see your opinion on this, because we are talking we see that in Europe, we see protection in the outer borders, but in our cities, we keep on building invisible walls that separate the population in situation of poverty from the population that do not live in situation of poverty. I would like your thoughts on this.
A los dos, hasta los dos. A Olivier y luego
So this is for both. First Oliver, and then to the other. Okay. Well.
I'm a bit embarrassed on the first one because I have no updated information on situations in Spain, which either myself or my predecessor, Philip Alston, have been examining. I think you were referring to the fruit pickers in Huelva, but there also was a very important discussion about the shanty town of Cañada Real in Madrid, where we also intervened. I say we because my predecessor and myself worked on these topics. But I can't comment on the current situation because I would need to go there, interview people, and assess. On the second point of segregation, I think it's a very important point. Let me say this, and maybe sociologists have an expression to describe this, but left to itself, a free society will result in segregation. Why? Because the price of housing will be high in certain neighborhoods, so the rich will go there, and people living in poverty on low incomes, they will go in low-income neighborhoods where the price of housing is less important. And where do parents put their children to school? Well, they put the children to school in the neighborhood schools, right? Because that's easier. And they will very often, that will very often result in schools that are de facto segregated. And even if you have rich and poor, well, schools with relatively better off students and schools with relatively low-income students coexisting in the same space, very often schools perversely select the students, and the higher you rise in the years, the more schools appear to be segregated, because children from low-income backgrounds are told, this school is not ideal for you. You should go to, school number 2 rather than school number 1, because you understand the exigencies of our place and so on. And that is the advice parents are given. And the parents want, their children to feel well, and so they put children in schools that are not the most demanding, the most elite schools and so on. So I think that is the reality. What can we do against this? I think we should study carefully the benefits of affirmative action schemes that, for example, build social housing units in rich neighborhoods. And ways of allocating children across schools that ensure not only that schools with high numbers of low-income children receive better support, but also that all schools are roughly representative of different socioeconomic backgrounds. I think that is what we should do. The only proviso I have is that when you have social mixity enforced, sometimes this has led in the past to certain households moving from one neighborhood to another. For example, a low-income family moving to a richer neighborhood because there is a social housing unit built there, and they lose their social connections, they lose their networks, and they find it difficult to live in this rich neighborhood because they are looked down upon by the neighbors. They suffer from aporophobia, and as a result, their integration in the new neighborhood may be difficult in some cases. But that is what I can say. I really think that left to its own devices, a society has a tendency to segregate along class lines.
Yo quería decir una cosa pequeñita.
So I wanted to say something, which is that, yes, actually, nowadays there are some very interesting works about the ethics of the city. This has to do with the fact that we need to create an ethics of the city, a fair ethics of the city. Now we speak about fair cities, and in fair cities we would have to distribute somehow the neighborhoods in such a way that the people could relate with one another regardless of their social condition. And schools should be built in such a way that students from different backgrounds could access them. And that is a very interesting project, because in the future is a future of cities. The rural world is declining progressively, and promoting cities and planning cities is very important. And the project of creating a fair city might sound a little utopian, but I think it's necessary, because otherwise, as we have seen, segregation occurs naturally because people want to live with their likes. But in the design of the city, it would be very important, and there are some works that are going in this direction. I think they should be promoted. This is a very interesting question. Yeah, thank you. We have another question behind. If we could perhaps give him, the gentleman, the microphone. My name is Manuel Martínez Ramírez. I'm a member of the National Association of Roma Population since the last 53 years. I would like to make a comment in connection, or address it to Adela, to my dear friend Adela. My dear friend Adela, I would like to make a comment. In the year 2017, when you published in the newspaper El País an article that talked about the pathology of hatred, you created the right word for it. I remember Ramon Jimenez, who said, intelligence, give me the right name for things. And I think you were so right about this term. When I'm in Murcia, I remember Lorca the town, and the earthquake. When the earthquake took place in Lorca, we came here to pressure the administration in Murcia. And I have to say that, regrettably, the situation was never fully tackled. The Gypsy, the Roma neighborhood of Lorca was lost, and the people who lived like the goats in the mountain, some of them died, including a woman who died with a baby in her womb because her house collapsed during the earthquake. And everything we did, we actually presented a project that was never admitted, that was never resolved, and the problem is still there. And with regard to the ethics of the first city, I think we need to start from the beginning, and the beginning is before. We developed a project called EGBV, General Basic Instruction for Life. Now, for the people who never attended school, and for the people that need to graduate in knowledge and the life development of their potentialities. Without that basic instruction for life, they will never be able to go to the other side of that sea of ignorance, which is the mother of all disgraces.
Pero yo creo que
Thank you very much for your question, but I think that in fact we have the means so that we have a basic instruction, a very good one. We have the means, but I'm asking myself if people are really interested in receiving this basic instruction, because really we have schools, we have everything, we have places where people can be prepared for life, obviously. So I'm asking myself if there is a lot of interest in this, so that they receive these instructions. Because for the moment, well, I don't know if this population is interested in this or in some other things. People are glad to be in terraces, but I don't know if all young people are interested in learning as I was when I was young. I don't know if we have lost interest in learning. We have to recover that attitude so that each person creates their own life. I would like, well, we have a few time left, and I noticed that there are a lot of women here, and some of them are representing some associations. We've been talking about aporophobia in a homogeneous way, but Olivier and Adela have said, sometimes there is a double discrimination suffered by women. And if some of these social entities, the representatives of these associations working with women, this is also linked to health and aporophobia. Maybe one of those women representatives would like to participate. I don't know if you dare to speak. Maybe you wish to participate, some of you? No? Not now? Okay. Please. Yes? Why not? She is? Yes? I don't want to force you. Just, if you wish, just briefly. It's as a volunteer, but I encourage you. Well, I introduce you to her. She is a representative of an association of volunteer work in health. I would like to ask about women in aporophobia related to the topic of aporophobia. And I know this bias of gender is important. And I don't know if you agree with me that regarding aporophobia, women suffer a lot more because of the situation of the family, of herself, of her role in the family and in the society, and the disregard that she suffers. I would like to know about your opinion. Well, I know. I have an answer. I think the important thing are the persons who have a life and they don't have a price. And they can be men and women. I know a lot of men that suffer a lot, and men and women, who suffer a lot as well. So I don't really like to make a distinction between men and women, because in daily life, yes, women suffer, but men suffer as well. I don't think it's necessary maybe to differentiate between men and women, because all of us have dignity. I would like to say something. When I see someone invites me to a place because I'm a woman, I don't really like it. I don't attend, because I have my opinion, my point of view, and yeah, your opinion is yours, and it's valid as the opinion of someone else, who is a man, maybe. Well, there is an index of poverty which is bigger in women. Most of all, when they have a family with just one parent. I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about the data, the daily data regarding matters of health or mental health. It's being medicalized, but there are really poverty problems because the majority of this population have mental problems. So I'm talking about this problem. Olivier?
Interesting question. The relationship between aporophobia and the discrimination women face and the fact that they are disproportionately impacted by poverty. And let me explain what I see as a relationship. In the European Union, I don't have the figures for Spain, but the wage gap between men and women is 13%. At the end of the career, the gap is 31%, because very often women had to interrupt their careers for some time to take care of children or the older persons and so on, and their pensions are therefore much lower. Now, the reason why we have this important gap has to do in part with the fact that the same tasks performed by women rather than men are paid less, but it's also, and it's especially because of segregation. Women do things in the care economy, health, education in particular, and men do other things. And what men do is better valued by society, as if it were more important. That's the reality. Why is it considered to be less important what women do? It's considered to be more about reproductive tasks rather than productive tasks. It is considered to contribute less to the GDP, but especially it serves people in poverty more. And I'm convinced that the undervaluing of the work that is mostly feminine work has much to do with anti-poor prejudice, right? Why is it that school teachers, that nurses, that doctors are paid much less than bankers, private bankers or traders or engineers? Well, it's because the nurses, the teachers, they teach also poor communities that do not have enough money to pay, right? And so I think there's a very interesting connection there.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Well, we are about to finish, and I think they're going to close the building even. But I'd like to ask somebody following us from Euskadi, and he's asking on the social media. He's asking us regarding what Olivier was saying. There is stigma, but there are also persons not identifying themselves with vulnerable populations, so they don't think they have the right to receive this help. So maybe it's better for them not to think they are vulnerable, but then they are farther from their rights. I would like to know, what do you think about not identifying these persons? What do you think about the fact that these persons don't recognize themselves as vulnerable? Thank you for your participation. Just briefly, this auto or self-determination as a vulnerable person, which is a shaming. Just briefly, please. Olivier and Adela, if you want.
Yeah, I think it's true that many people in poverty who should be able to claim support do not do so because they don't perceive themselves as part of the people that deserve support. So it's a question of outreach and information. Mm-hmm. But there is something else which is more important and more closely linked to aporophobia, which is that these persons may feel they do not want to be treated as in poverty. I mean, for example, queuing for a food bank is deeply humiliating. And you have to really have kids that are hungry to, accept the shame of doing that. Should we promote people in poverty prides like we have gay prides, so that people in poverty receive the message that they have nothing to be ashamed about? The reason why you are poor is not your fault, not your mistake, it's not your failure. It's society that is to blame. And you should go on the streets and proudly claim your rights. That is what NGOs should be doing, perhaps. Overcome this shame. I think it's really important because it is indeed, and that is what was implicit in the question, it is one reason why people do not claim what they have a right to. They are just ashamed of presenting themselves as in need of support.
Bueno, yo también quería decir algo por acabar, y es que efectivamente
I would like to say something as well, that we human beings live in communities, one with another, and this contact should lead us to say to somebody that this person is vulnerable and they need help, and we should help them receive these social services. So in this sense, we should never forget we need each other, we have to support each other, not only politicians, but also the civil society and the citizens. We have to help each other so that we can recognize our situation or the situation of someone who is vulnerable but not responsible for their situation. And this is our responsibility, because individuality is not going to help us. Thank you very much, Olivier and Adela. Before leaving from the organization, we're going to show a video from the campaign on aporophobia to be able to make it visible with images and people speaking of aporophobia and to raise awareness about aporophobia.
Well, from the European Network Against Poverty, we came out today to ask the citizens in Madrid about the term aporophobia, kind of a discrimination, hatred, and rejection against people in situations of poverty. Let's see if they know the term, with the idea of raising awareness and fighting it. Let's see if they know what it means. No, I don't know it at all. No, not at all. Aporophobia? What is that? I guess it's fear or phobia to something. No, I don't know. Yes, of course. So can you tell us what it means? Yes, it's a word that means that many people should reject poverty. Aporophobia is the fear, hatred, and rejection of people in situations of poverty. This word was created by Adela Cortina in the 90s. Created, because there is a phenomenon that needs to be identified if we want to eradicate it. Do you think that this kind of discrimination exists? Yes, I think in certain circumstances it can create rejection. The people who are on the other side, so we can feel a little threatened. Yes, I think there's people who feel this rejection, and this happens today. Yeah. We can see this when we ignore people who are in situation of disadvantage. You can see it when we get away from those people. Aporophobia, just like the rest of discrimination, is based on stereotypes. Stereotypes are a set of beliefs that are not true, but that we believe as true, and according to which we classify people. If the stereotype is negative, then if we believe that people in the situation of poverty are lazy, then the emotion that we'll raise will be negative, will be rejection, will be aporophobia. Yes, totally. And I think aporophobia affects us all. And I think sometimes we can realize that it affects us and we can try to transform it. We can try to improve this. At least it's important to know it. Well, I notice sometimes that people change the walkway because, sometimes some people reject us. I think, yes, it exists. Aporophobia actually is a phenomenon that sometimes hides the real problem, which is in economics and social system that is unfair, creates inequalities and subjects people to poverty. Aporophobia doesn't act isolated. It intersects with other forms of discrimination. Poverty is caused due to structural causes, such as a stressed labor market, a very impossible housing market, and some foreign laws of immigration that marginalize thousands of people. And these can also affect people in situation of vulnerability, people that suffer all the forms of discrimination. Yeah, this is a country that is still unequal. Spain must change the way it manages the economy so that there can be more solidarity with the working people, so that people can have access to a family or a house. How do we eradicate aporophobia? Spain is a leader country in anti-discriminatory laws. However, this is still a phenomenon that is not well known. This means that people do not access to resources. We're also worried about the fact that institutional answer to poverty is criminalizing the people who suffer it. Yes, I think it's important to make laws to fight against this kind of discrimination and to include the people in situations of poverty. Everything that makes us lose the fear to other people is important. I think it's key to act legally, not only against this phobia, but against all the kinds of phobias. All the discriminatory phobia, all the phobias that discriminate the social differences must be tackled by laws. Anti-discriminatory policies must always be hand in hand with social and economic policies, guaranteeing dignity to all people. For example, tax policies that distribute better their wealth. I think all people have the right to live happy regardless of their social class, regardless of the clothes they wear. And I think we should have respect for everything. Not respect for every people, whether rich or poor. laws and more money for social projects, and not the NATO. It would be nice if we all had a dignified house and job, and not to pay for everything. Perhaps there would be less poverty. Most of people do not want to understand that the civil society is the only one that can fight. Also, politics is very badly regarded today. Yeah, create systemic policies to prevent the situation of poverty and that there are people in vulnerable situations. So this is not about so that we wouldn't have to legislate against aporophobia. All right, aporophobia is a problem that is not known for great part of the society, but it still exists. We need to identify it. We need to know that it's not an individual problem, and we need to remember that the most efficient measure is to eradicate poverty. Okay, so this is the video that we have created to raise awareness. With this, we will end. So thank you very much for attending, for participating. Thank you to Adela Cortina and Olivier de Schutter, to the organization of EAPN in Spain, in Murcia. Thank you to the technical team and the translators that create bridges between cultures. And tomorrow we will meet here in the second day at in the morning, approaching aporophobia from different points of view. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.